Hi there, my name's Annette with Sunbeam Fabric Art. Welcome to my channel. Do you ever have so many scraps on hand that you are slightly overwhelmed? I was definitely feeling overwhelmed after finishing quite a few quilts. I had lots and lots of strips left over from trimming the edges. In my next few videos, I'm going to take you through some projects that we can use up these strip scraps and smaller scraps as well, because they just build up and they can be overwhelming and daunting, but we're going to get some things done. In our project today, we are going to be using what I found at a thrift store, which is a vinyl flannel feeling backed tablecloth. I got it for $3 or $4, pretty cheap, and I thought I'm going to be able to use this for some kind of neat project. And I thought this vinyl inside would be a perfect fit for a grocery tote. The first thing I did was lay this vinyl tablecloth out on my floor, and on the flannel side I drew lines for rectangles. I decided I could make two nice big grocery totes with a vinyl lining out of this tablecloth. And I will put the rectangle measurements in the description of this video. Once I got my lines all drawn where I wanted them and all squared up, I cut out my rectangles, and those oval ends, there was kind of a large piece on the oval curved end. I am going to use those in a future project as well. Once I had a blank canvas to work with, I started kind of auditioning fabrics and deciding if I wanted to make them diagonal or horizontal and vertical. The nice thing about these flannel backed tablecloths, the fabric sticks to them very well. My next design choice was what color of canvas strap I wanted to use, and I decided to use green for today's bag. And based on the green strap, I pulled out some strips that I thought would look nice with a bright green strap. My next step was to place two strips on my rectangle on the flannel side, and I placed those strips right sides together, and I sewed a seam to join them together. For this bag, I just decided I was going to do diagonal strips across the whole rectangle, so I took them to the sewing machine and I stitched the two strips together. Then I opened that up and finger pressed that seam and just kept adding strips on both sides of the first two strips. And a couple of notes about the vinyl. I did not feel comfortable using an iron to press strips flat. And one note about stitching the vinyl, my feed dogs seemed to not be able to grab the vinyl very well at a high speed. If I slowed my machine stitch speed all the way down to the slowest setting, it did seem to be able to grab the vinyl, but going at top speed, I really did have to pull that vinyl through the back of the machine because my feed dogs just were not grabbing it very well. Once I stitched all the strips that I needed to cover the entire rectangle, I did a quick rough trim around the edges so I could see what I was doing here. I really like the way these diagonal strips look for this bag, so I'm pretty excited about it. All right, with those excess rough edges trimmed away, now it's time to truly trim this bag correctly. So I lined it up as best I could, and then I made sure and made straight edges. I lined up that fold with a straight line on my cutting mat, and then I cut the sides, and then I used lines on my ruler and on the cutting mat to make sure this was a square cut. I decided to do a box corner on this bag to make it stand up better for groceries. With the fold of the bag facing me at the bottom of your screen, I laid my ruler down on the side over there and I cut out a 3" by 3" square. Then I repeated cutting out this 3" square on the opposite side. I probably could have done this a little bit easier, and in the future I will do it a little bit differently. I will draw a line instead of trying to use a rotary cutter here. I will draw a line and just cut this with my scissors. Using the rotary cutter, I had an issue of a cut that I made too far and then one cut that I didn't make far enough. The next thing I did was put markings on my bag at the top of the bag for my straps. First, I made marks at 3" on each side of the bag because that is where the box corner opening is. And then from there, I measured in and drew a line at 3" and 4". So from the edge of the bag, it would be 6 and 7 inches. After deciding on the proper placement for my strap length, I drew a little line down below those two marks at 9 inches. And I made the decision to stitch my straps to the inside of the bag. Now when you're stitching your straps, leave an inch or so, or 2 even, before you hit the top of the bag. We're going to add some binding to the top of our bag at the very end to finish it, and we don't want to sew over our straps. I decided I wanted a couple of pockets on the outside of this bag, so here's a little bonus tutorial. I sewed a bunch of scraps together into a rectangle, and then I sewed a bright turquoise wide strip on one side of this rectangle. Once I had that strip sewed, I folded it back and finger pressed it, trimmed off the excess. Then I folded it over to the other side of the rectangle and sewed that side down as well to make a little tube. I turned my tube right side out and pressed it very well, and then I ended up cutting that tube in half to make 2 pockets. I turned the pockets wrong sides out, then I stitched down one side completely closed, and then I stitched down the other side about an inch from the top of the pocket and about an inch or so from the bottom of the pocket, leaving myself an opening to turn it back right side out again. And here are my two finished pockets. That opening that I turned them through has been pressed flat, and that will get stitched closed when I attach these pockets to my bag. I used the stitch line from my straps to center my pocket. Next, I stitched the three sides of my pocket down to the bag, and I did a reverse stitch at the beginning and the end just to double that up and make that opening strong. With all that prep work done, it is time to finally put this bag together. We're going to place the right sides of this bag together with the fold at the bottom. We are going to clip or pin the sides of the bag, and we will stitch those two sides first. Now that those sides are stitched, we are going to do these box seams. I like to describe this as opening a bag of microwave popcorn. That is the way I try to open this box corner. You want that seam from the side to match up with any seam or fold of the bottom of the bag, and then pin that together and stitch your seam. And just an FYI, I am using stitch number 78 on the inside seams of my bag. I have plenty of rolls of binding left over from other projects, so I'm using some leftover binding. I'm going to cut that edge straight. The way I do this to make it fast and easy for myself, I fold down the side, the edge, into like a 45-degree angle of the end of the binding. Then I fold that back down on the pressed line. It makes a little triangle opening. When I get all the way around to the other side, I'm going to tuck the end of the binding into that little triangle. So I made it all the way around the bag, and I've got that opening tail that I left unsewn, and I am going to trim this binding about a ½ an inch farther than that triangle, kind of echoing the shape of the triangle so that it tucks in that opening very nicely. And then I am just going to get that stitch down. If you're feeling uncomfortable with it, you could pin all that in place before you go back to stitch it. In this case, the project was small. I wasn't too worried about this, so I just did it by feel and touch and got that binding all finished up. Once I had it completely stitched down to the wrong side of the bag, I folded that binding over onto the right side of the bag and stitched it down to make a nice finished edge for the top of my bag. And the very last step in assembling this bag is to finish stitching down those straps. And if I didn't already say it, I decided to stitch my straps to the inside of the bag. It's completely optional, inside, outside, however you want to do it. I just thought that bright green kind of brightened up the inside of my bag. I turned the bag right side out, used a pokey tool to push out the corners, and we are done with this bag. Hey, thanks for coming along with me today on this journey using leftover fabric scraps and an upcycled tablecloth from the 50s that was probably going to get thrown in the trash. I think this bag is so adorable. It's got plenty of room on the inside of the bag, and that vinyl lining is going to be nice for groceries. Got 2 pockets. Pockets are great. I love pockets. And I hope you'll try this, and I hope to see you again real soon.